When I played The Last of Us Part 2 when it first came out years ago, I, along with many other people, were very frustrated. This video is going to have full spoilers, by the way. Joel's death, while probably inevitable, was brutal, and it was hard to really let go of such a beloved character, especially the way it happened and who did it. So by the time I reached the end of the game, I was left almost apathetic. I recognized that the gameplay was as good as it's ever been. Graphics were amazing, but Ellie wasn't the same, and I just watched a lot of characters I just didn't care about live and die. And while I thought there were some bright moments, by the end I was just wishing that they never made a sequel to The Last of Us in the first place. But here we are, several years later, and for some reason I decided to just replay the original Last of Us. I played that game so many times, and it's one of my favorite games ever, so I decided to give it a go. And after replaying it, still love it. Still great. Great characters, great moments. That ending still just as impactful as ever. But after I did that, I thought, man, should I do the unthinkable? Should I replay The Last of Us 2? I mean, when I first finished it, I thought I'd probably never play it again. But I decided to just go ahead and bite the bullet, boot up The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered, and after playing it from beginning to end, I think I like the game now. It's still not perfect. It's nowhere near as good as the original Last of Us, but I don't hate the game anymore, and I can appreciate what it was going for. First of all, I think anytime you're playing as Ellie, that's the game at its very best. Ellie is a character that we all know and love. And I mean, I think everyone bought the game to play as Ellie. Joel too, of course, but it was obvious if they were going to do a sequel to the first game, we probably weren't going to be playing as Joel. Seeing her journey and her growth, or lack thereof, from beginning to end was the most compelling aspect of this game. Ellie is clearly destroyed by Joel's death, and she deeply regrets the terms that she ended their relationship on before he died. Now, at the end of the game, you know that they somewhat start repairing their relationship, but they never got to fix it completely. And so that guilt is welling up inside of her, and that's what drives her on such a crazy journey across Seattle trying to kill all these people that killed Joel. Her relationship with Dina is weird. I still to this day don't understand. I mean, I guess I somewhat get why they have such a weird relationship between her and Jesse, and she's pregnant with Jesse's son, and she was dating Jesse, and then a week later starts dating Ellie. I don't know. Their relationship's weird. I don't really understand why it had to be like that, and for them to kind of fall in love with each other so quickly, I also thought was kind of weird, because it's like, I don't know, they've known each other forever, but the way they talk to each other in the beginning, it's like they didn't have any real deep conversations until after they randomly kissed each other at a dance. So it makes me wonder, like, how close really were they to begin with? I don't know. It doesn't really matter that much. If you're into their romance, then it probably makes some parts of the game hit harder for you, but for me, I was never into it. Dina was a cool enough character, but I just couldn't really care about their relationship too much. Jesse was also cool. It was a shame he went out like that. But much like a lot of other characters, he wasn't really in the game long enough for me to care that much. Which brings me to Abby. A lot of people hate Abby, and I get it, because she kills Joel. I mean, that's reason enough, right? But she's really not a terrible character, and you can understand why she did what she did. Revenge a lot of times is kind of a good enough excuse to do something, but I mean, not only did Joel kill her father, the Fireflies were already on their way out, but he put the final nail in them and destroyed the entire world as she knew it. You know, everything that kept her going, her reason for existence, the structure of her life was all gone now because of Joel. On top of that, he killed any possible chance of a cure to save humanity. Joel saving Ellie at the end of The Last of Us was an incredibly selfish act, obviously. That's what makes the ending so good. Joel had it coming. You know, Abby is a compelling enough character. She's not the most interesting. I like that she's afraid of heights. I can relate to that, I guess. But as an individual, you don't really know that much about her. I don't really know what Abby likes, what she's really into, I guess other than working out. Compared to a lot of other characters in the original game, even someone like Bill in the first Last of Us game, you get a lot of sense of what he's really about. You know, obviously you find out he's gay, you find out that he's kind of a loner and super paranoid, might have like, I don't know, maybe not schizophrenia, but some sort of a personality disorder. The way he talks to himself and keeps to himself. He doesn't like it when people touch his stuff. He had like a very strong impact when he shows up. And he's not there for super long, but his screen time is maximized. And then you get to The Last of Us 2, and you have Mel, who's just kind of a bitch. I understand why she doesn't like Abby, and in the end, she ended up being totally right because she kind of cucked her. But she doesn't really have anything else going for her outside of that. Same thing with like Nora. Nora is just a doctor. And then you have Owen, whose name I straight up couldn't even remember. I had to just look it up. He's an important character to Abby's story, and I couldn't remember his name. That's kind of says it all. He's just a dude who was friends with Abby who really doesn't like all this killing shit. But again, he's just not really around that much, and when he is around, he's just flirting with Abby. He doesn't really have anything particularly interesting to say, and he's not super enjoyable to watch. Lev is alright, I guess. Yara's fine. Very sympathetic character, especially. Yara's whole life just kind of gets ruined and then she dies. But neither one of these characters are particularly compelling. I mean, the only thing, like, if you really feel bad for Lev being trans in this hyper-religious society, you know that sucks because they can be what they wanted to be. But Abby just saves them, just because. And she kind of implies that the reason she did it is that she needed to do something good for once. But she doesn't regret killing Joel, and everything she does in the game is fairly justified in that she's a part of the wolves, so she just fights clickers and stuff. So I don't even know what she feels this sense of justice for in the first place. It's never really explained. So you basically have half of a game that's super compelling when you're playing as Ellie, and then you have another half where you're playing as Abby, and you're surrounded by fairly uninteresting characters, and you're playing as somebody that you're just predisposed to not liking because of her actions in the beginning of the game. And when you're finally off of Abby, things get good again. I like the last chunk of The Last of Us Part 2. I like that Ellie settles down with Dina and JJ's born, and she tries to live a normal life until eventually, you know, the PTSD catches up with her and she has to make a choice, similar to how Joel did. Do you make the selfish choice and ruin something potentially great? Or do you make the safe choice that could potentially make you unhappy? And she made the selfish choice. She gets to these new guys called the Rikers or something, I don't remember their names, and they're horrible. They're like maybe the worst militia group that we've seen in the series. They've got slaves, they hang people to die. It's insane. You know that Abby's been there for several months. Ellie still goes and she fights her and tries to kill her. But it's like as she's doing it, she realizes that it's not really going to solve anything. And what she went through is bad enough that killing her wasn't even worth it anymore. It was great. In the final cutscene with Joel, it still makes me emotional. I mean, I'm not going to cry. I'm big tough guy and everything, but it's really rough seeing the way that their relationship fell apart, but the fact that they were going to attempt to fix it. It's powerful, but it just makes it all the more sad knowing that he dies like the next day. And so Ellie gets back home and Dina's packed up her stuff and left. And now you just wonder what Ellie's gonna do next. I remember when I first finished the game, I thought, well, they have to do the trifecta. They have to do the last game to really tie up the story. But once again, after I played it this time, I don't really know that you do need to make another game. The Last of Us 1 is like perfect in my eyes. The sequel isn't, but what do you really do next? I mean, yeah, would it be nice to see Ellie have a happy ending? Of course, but there's no hook for a third game. What, I mean, is Ellie just gonna go back to Jackson? That's cool, I'd be cool with that. Do you need to make a whole game about that? I don't know. Do we really need to see Abby ever again? I mean, yeah, she can go with Lev and join the Santa Barbara Fireflies. Do I really want to see that? Does anybody really want to see that? I don't think so. I do appreciate The Last of Us Part 2 more, and I see what they were going for. You know, the whole game kind of being a metaphor for the Palestinian and Israeli conflict, the cycle of revenge, and how grief affects people. You know, there's some pretty powerful themes. There was a really good attempt, and I think it was successful for the most part when it comes to Ellie. You probably couldn't remove Abby's story from it, but I don't know, maybe if there was less of it, or maybe you swap between Ellie and Abby, just so that it didn't feel like you were dragging on playing as Abby for so long, because eventually you just lose interest. I still love The Last of Us. As far as a third game, I will probably be there, but very, very cautiously. Anyway, those are just some random thoughts. Thanks for watching. Sleep tight, everybody.